past that. I say we don't keep people homeless. We're not a coalition, and it's just generally confusing. One of the neat things about our rebrand was the opportunity for us to join with Family Promises nationally. Nationally, there are almost 200 other Family Promises. So we are Family Promises of Big Bend. There's a Family Promise of Gainesville and of Orlando. All Family Promises are an emergency shelter that serve families in addition to X, Y, and Z. And we all have different X, Y's, and Z's. Ours largely focuses on veterans and housing, as some of you know. But we all have that in common and get to work and collaborate in a space full of people who are at least all offering emergency shelter to families and looking at how we transition them to stable, affordable housing in our community. I'm sharing with you a little bit today. This is our chairperson, our annual report. We created our first annual report, and I think it'll hit some things I'd love to share with you that we accomplished in 2022. It'll give you an overview of the housing spaces we are currently working in, and feel free to ask questions along the way. So we talk about this the most, but I think our mission is critical, that we want to end homelessness, and the end that I think is quality services and affordable housing are the big things that we work to provide, because you can't move people from homelessness or even really crisis without services and helping them access affordable housing. And so that's kind of our frame of everything we do, is plugged in and ties back to one of those things in our community. When you think of Family Promise or Big Bend Homeless Coalition, a lot of people in the community, I feel like, only knew about Hope Community. And that is just a little piece of what we do, but I often start there. So Hope Community's name won't change. None of our other program name changes, just our big umbrella name changes. Hope is, I think, a pillar in our community. It is the only family shelter that is available, and it serves families. So you have to be, people have this question a lot, you have to be in custody of a minor child, right? And we're the only shelter between Pensacola and Gainesville that really serves families with that specific target and focus, and operates as an emergency shelter, part of our continuum of care in that space. Something people don't know, and I get asked all the time about emergency shelters, for some reason they only think we serve women, which just isn't true. We have single dads. As long as the dad has custody of the kid, they're still a parent, right? Mm-hmm. And then something else we see that people don't often know is that if a grandparent has custody of their grandchild and is experiencing homelessness, we serve them as well. So our term of a family shelter is a little broader than what sometimes people initially think. So we serve men. I'm always like, yes, men can come to family shelter and grandparents. I think that's important. We provided shelter to about 350 family members last year. When we serve you at Hope, my goal, and everybody's goal, is to have a 60-day exit. Emergency shelter best practices are that you're not an emergency shelter, it's supposed to be temporary, right? I say we're a village, but we're a temporary village. So everything from the minute you walk through that door is about moving you home to a permanent home and not keeping you in shelter. So it's targeted. Mm-hmm. And we work with partners in the community. Oasis is one of those partners. It's fun to see here. There's a single mom support group they're bringing back, which is really important. We work with a lot of different, we work with Career Source and doing some things. We don't exist without our partners. They all work with us, collaborate with us, and each client, if they stay with us for 14 days, their family unit has an individualized housing plan. And we look at what are their barriers to housing, and then what are their steps to get there. So as I was coming on about a year and a half ago, we were averaging about a 61-day length of stay. That number has gotten substantially higher. We're looking at like 6 months, and people often ask what's happened. And when you think about what's happened, it might not be surprising to anybody in this room, but housing and housing affordability really impact the length of stay. I think what people don't want to talk about and they don't often see is many of the families that I serve in emergency shelter are working. And each day, it's fun when people walk through and like, where are all your people? And I'm like, oh, they're at work. because that's like a conception people don't often think about. They think, oh, you're homeless, you're not working. That just isn't a reality. And especially right now in the economy we live in. Many of my families are working, some of them. My very first month or so, I met a lady who was working, she was about to leave Hope, which was really exciting. And she was telling me about her path out of Hope, but she was working 3 jobs. I mean, that is grit if I've ever heard it. To live in a family shelter, to be a single mom and to raise your kids and have 3 jobs is incredible. I'm like, you are basically a modern day hero. That takes grit for measure. And that's we serve a lot of people who are working and are putting pieces together, or maybe they have a Section 8 housing voucher but nowhere to go. There's lots of snags in this system that make it really complicated. It's not a simple path. So whereas we set you up that we would like for you to leave in 60 days, every 30 days we review your plan. So I'm not kicking you out of shelter. If you're working, if you're doing everything you can do, we're not saying you have to leave, right? That doesn't make sense. There are rules, there are guidelines, there are things you can't do, right? Like you can't leave your kids unattended. You can't you have to show up if you're staying in shelter. You can't just disappear. There are some things that are guidelines that we all have to follow. But there are people who are following all the guidelines, working really hard, and in 60 days they can't access it. So we collaborate with community partners. One of our other programs talk about serve some of our families as we're moving forward. But that's one of the big things we do is emergency shelter at Hope Community.
Where's Hope Community?
It is at 2729 West Pensacola Street. So right down the McCartney Center on Pensacola Street. Oh, well, another thing we do is permanent supportive housing. And this is another program that's funded by HUD. It is housing for community members that have a documented disability and something called a chronic homeless history. So this serves some of our most vulnerable community members. We have about 70 spots that are individuals and about 15 spots of that are families. So that is something that we get HUD funding through, but I think it's a really special thing in our community. If you think about having a year of homelessness in a 3-year window, that is a pretty significant period of time. And so when people are in permanent supportive housing, the majority of them have a significant mental illness. And they're clients who often in our society fall through the cracks. They don't have the services they need. They haven't had the services they need. We don't really have institutions. So with long-term significant mental illness, there's really not places for people to go other than homelessness. So we know some of our there's not a ton of transition in permanent supportive housing. So we know clients aren't necessarily going to not need supportive housing, and that's okay. That's why it was designed. Some people can, and some people can't. Especially when you look at, that's my families, but more when you're looking at single people, we have some people with persistent, chronic mental illness, and we know that they will need supportive housing forever. They need that case manager checking on them. They need that support in our community. And that is one of my favorite things that we do is help people who have long homeless histories often move into supportive housing and relearn what it looks like to be housed in our community and to be a part of our community. And one of the things we did that came away of the pandemic was that we provided 494 individuals rapid rehousing. And that is for somebody who isn't necessarily homeless yet, right? When you're right there on the cusp of homelessness and you need an intervention, we had dollars to intervene. And that meant I could maybe help catch you up on rent. We could pay a deposit for you. There were some stipulations about what we could do, but it was ideally to prevent that entry into the homeless system. We have so HUD and ARPA funds infused nonprofits nationally with a lot of this money, and it was really impactful to 494 people, right? We helped them stay housed. This money is virtually gone in all of our communities. So during the pandemic, you really saw less homelessness than you see now, which sometimes surprises people. But our wait list for Hope Community, our area's family shelter, was nearly 100 people last summer. That's the highest we've ever seen it. That's higher than it was in the pandemic because there was all these other fundings like that rapid rehousing funding to keep people stable, to keep them housed. You know, like all government funding, there's timelines on when you have to spend it by, right? So it was you spend it or you lose it. And so community spent it, which is what we were doing. And it was good to spend it, made an impact, but it's not like refillable funding. It's not like you're going to keep getting that. So since that funding is no longer there in our community virtually, we are seeing way more families enter homelessness. And something that I think it's different for Tallahassee, our shelter director that has been there for over a decade, and she's never seen anything like it. And I think if you put a camera sometimes in my lobby and you can see the people just like come and ask for housing, leave with all the money I need. You just have families that there's no other choice except to put them on a wait list because we are completely at capacity at all times. You know, as one family moves in, another family, we just fill them and work with them for the next spot. One of the neat things that we have now, this is new funding for us, is that we have some diversion dollars and we have some homeless prevention dollars. Not the scale that I had rapid rehousing dollars, but it does allow us to, when a client calls saying like, I need emergency shelter, right, to ask them targeted questions. And sometimes with a specific pot of money, we can intervene and keep them out of shelter. We call that diversion. We're just kind of like it sounds like, we're keeping you out of shelter. The ROI on that is incredible. It's much, much cheaper to keep somebody out of shelter than to pay for them to be in shelter. And that really just looks at how much it costs on average length of stay. And we're really not even taking into account, like, what does it look like to somebody's mental health to have to enter shelter? Like, nobody goes, oh, when I grew up, I want to live in shelter, right? Like, that's not anybody's life plan. So if we can intervene, we know that is a huge win for our clients. So we have a little bit of homeless prevention dollars and a little bit of diversion dollars that we target to that wait list. And if there's a way to intervene, we do, which has been going really well. It's not, you know, we could always do more. We just got a grant for another $10,000 for it. Then we found a matching 10 and I'm supposed to raise 20 more. Every 40,000 helps. I wish that I had, like, when we had that rapid rehousing, I had like $2.3 million. That's an astronomical amount of money and it helped a ton of people. But I will take every 40,000, 80,000 we can put together because to every family we intervene with, yes, it's not everybody, but to each of those 5 or 6 people, that's huge. For them, that's their life and their story. So that's kind of some highlights. I'm going to keep going on other things we do. One of the things I think is like a big secret about Family Promise I've been trying to talk to everybody about is that we are the largest provider of veteran services outside of the VA for the entire Big Bend. And somehow people don't know that. We serve a similar population, right? Veterans that are either on the cusp of homelessness or homeless and provide them with housing. We do this 2 different ways. We have an SSVF program, federal money that comes through the VA, and it serves to provide housing similar with the VA twist to rapid rehousing, and it takes those veterans, pays for their housing, gets them set up in an apartment or house, and pays their rent for different lengths of time depending on the funding stream and what their need is. It's a little more flexible and long going than rapid rehousing. We served 284 veterans with that funding last year. And then we have another veterans complex that we work with HUD-VASH and Section 8, and that serves veterans that often come out of the woods. They're veterans that have a significant disability, a documented homeless history, and we move them into one of 52 units that we own. And really, you know, it's a continuum of where you're at, but people come to us with a lot of stuff. And I don't really shy away from that. If you've been living in the woods and have that history, you have a lot of stuff. It's just life. But then we work with the VA, and on site, we have social workers that come out. There's a VA office. Social workers come out to us a week. We have a nurse that comes out twice every week. We bring on-site stuff in. So it's really helping those vulnerable veterans kind of get resituated and set up to be a part of a community that have a pretty significant homeless history. Primarily the veterans we serve at Homefront are veterans that are over the age of 55. They're typically post-Vietnam vets. And when you think about reality of Vietnam, you know, they didn't really have the services they need when they came back, right? We didn't welcome them back heroes. We didn't really provide them access to adequate mental health care, if any. And when you look at a veteran, and who is the most likely veteran to be homeless, it's post-Vietnam vets over the age of 55. And that is largely my complex.
And can I just ask,
Absolutely.
does this apply to spouses of veterans?
No,
It does not, just you have to be the veteran.
you do.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't a family. So that Homefront project is designed for individuals or one-bedroom apartments.
Okay.
The other project that I talked about earlier is for if families can come through that. It's just there's two different funding streams.
Okay, good.
And one can serve families, but I think the spouse has to be married. I mean, it can serve a whole family unit. So the spouse and the children, if they're a family, in the SSBF funding versus, most of my veterans that have been living in the woods do not have families at this point, and are I do serve women there. That's something people don't know. I think right now we have 4 women there. So we do sometimes have women that have that history and we serve. It's just not set, it's a one-bedroom apartment set up for individuals.
Yeah, and just so you know, there's an organization called Women Veterans Unite in Tallahassee. Are you familiar
I
with that?
am.
Good, excellent.
I've had 2 different women veterans groups out the home front because we are serving women there. I mean, I don't have all the answers to affordable housing or all the funding we need. We need so much of what I'm doing. I'm going to give you can ask me questions. We can talk more. I'm doing a few things that I absolutely love. We could do a ton more. We need a ton more options in our community. We're working on something that we'll talk about in a minute, but
Can I just clarify? So if you say you lost your spouse to the war, and this is indicative of my own family, at this point, well, I love what you're doing, but at this point, could you service those spouses who lost their husbands due to war, or not yet?
I don't think that is how the funding streams we are using. There are services for military spouses, male spouses for sure, but that's not how I'm set up from what I know.
That's okay.
Really, we operate with veterans. So when I say it's complicated, like really who I serve is who the VA tells me to serve. And I mean, it meets our mission, it's perfect, but there are like those guidelines. And so I would have to do some homework. I know there are organizations that serve male spouses. I just don't think we are them at this point.
No, that's great. I have 2 friends who are vets who y'all are servicing beautifully.
Yeah, and I think there's tons more need. Like I have a wait list. There's like 95 people waiting to get into like 52 units. And then I have it takes about 2 months on average when someone comes to one of my programs and we need to serve them if they're not currently homeless. There's just wait lists for all of these programs because the need in our community is so vast.
Would you partner with referrals for that kind of thing? Or just-
Say that again?
Would you refer people to just do partnerships that you refer people to, or how does that work?
I mean, there aren't an endless resources in our community to really refer them to, and they're more referred to us. Like when I don't choose who I get either. Like we work closely. We have a bi-weekly meeting with HUD-VASH, and they give us the next veteran on the list. I just ask Frank because I'm working on another project. I ask them what does their wait list look like because I'm taking them. So it's not like I'm really referring them. I'm mostly taking who they refer to me as they come, and then they're trying to there are other veterans groups doing. There's Vet Village. Vet Village isn't permanent housing though, but sometimes they take some of that overflow. There are we're different in that sense because we're permanent housing. You don't ever have to leave. Like we are set up to be your home forever, which I think is really special. But I don't have all the answers to all the wait lists. And go ahead.
I have a question about the wait list. So is the wait list because of their funding or you don't have enough housing for them?
I mean, both. I mean, there's a limited, so, when you have like a certain amount of social workers funded for positions, they can only have caseloads of so many. So that dictates partly who we serve in the community. And then also the number of units available. Like I can't make our 52 units any more than they are that we own, right? So they stay full all the time. Essentially, they're open for very short moments when somebody passes away generally. And then we have to clean them out, get them ready. But then this next person is sent to us, essentially. So they're both and. It depends on the program. One of the programs is more, there's like caseloads and we can't have more than a certain caseload and then getting them set. And the other one is just like there's a set number of units and that's who we serve. I'm going to talk about this now just because you guys are asking so many fun questions about it. But one of the things that we are working on really hard, and I've been working with the city and the county, and we had a county commission meeting where we approved to purchase land, and we're looking at getting funding to purchase the land, is to apply for Florida Housing Finance Corporation grant and to build about, it'll depend on tax credit dollars, but 65 to 75 new units. And they'll be a large veterans focus, but they will also serve people. There'll be a mix of some people in the units, about 40% will be veterans, about 20% will be more entry level homeless, and then the rest will be affordable housing, and that is just desperately needed. And that we set, it's, you know, Florida housing requirements that you have to be at like 60% area median income. So like we all need to be doing, like I want everyone to do this. And if I had a magic wand, I would have this built in like a day, and instead it will take, you know, 3 years.
And I would say, like many things, there's so much need, and you're just doing your best to address it with, you know, with the organizations. And this isn't the only organization. So I know when I used to work with student veterans at TCC, a lot of times some of the same questions would come up. Well, how can one person get the program and one person did not? But what Holly's describing is kind of the issue of a lot of organizations addressing affordable housing and housing of any sort. So thank you, Holly, for, you know, sharing what you can. And that's really exciting, what you just described. It is an actionable step that we could see come to fruition. So that's great.
Would you say you have property? Or
We have permission to buy it because it's city owned. That idea, and then we put in a letter of intent, and we have to get that passed in a commission meeting. And now I'm working on getting the funding together. We're doing all the necessary steps.
Right.
I've got a developer.
May I ask where it is?
It's on Capitol Circle, and it is. Did you know that Amazon is going to be on the Capitol Circle?
Yeah.
You know, like if you get off on Capitol Circle and you're going towards the airport,
Right.
it's like really close to that Lowe's right there. Here's the Lowe's and people out there.
So if a piece of property were being donated, how many acres would you need?
Probably about 5.
5.
Not to be picky, I can talk to you more about this. There are some things like I have to be close to bus lines. There's some things that make you competitive that I can't just build anywhere,
Right.
which kind of makes sense, like with cities and what we have to do with funding and who we're serving. But yeah, that's an exciting possibility given the location.
Yeah, and I just had a quick question, because talking about this, and I don't know if I missed it, but you said it would be 40% for veterans, and is there a percentage being saved for families, or is this property for individuals?
You know, we're really working on that. We're guessing on percentages. There's some wiggle room from where we've been talking to Florida Housing about what they're looking for, what best practices are. We've talked to the VA. 30 to 40% will be individuals, and we will do some 2 bedrooms that will be for families. Both at area median income and some that probably have some of that homeless history. And it'll be a mixed unit.
Gotcha, thank you.
Some of that will be a little flexible.
Just for idea of scale, about how many units do you all currently work on? I know
You know, we didn't get there,
Oh,
and, but before we started on this track, I was going to tell you about it. That's a great question to get me back on track. So we talked about the veterans complex, right? We have Hope Community, which we talked about, but we have 2 other complexes. We serve all those PSH people scattered site. That means we don't own them. We work with their landlords. That we talked about those 96, but we have 2 other complexes. We have a place that we call Balkan. It's out on Capitol Circle, kind of near the airport. Go past Second Harvest. If you know where Second Harvest is, in Intercontinental, about a mile, and there's a road called Balkan. We have 18 units out there, and that serves permanent people that have a need for permanent supportive housing. That's like a guideline to get there, and that means that you have to have that homeless history we talked about earlier in the 1 year to 3 year window, and the documented disability. That's about 65% veterans, and then the other 35% are just other people that have that homeless history background, so clearly affordable. And then I think we have one of the things I'm really excited about. If I had a magic wand, I'd clone times like 8. We have 3 bedroom, 2 bathrooms called Patrick Avenue. There's 8 of those units, and they all serve families clearly with that composition. That works really well for us because we are our area's family shelter, and I could build that up in a dream. We're turning the last 2 units now because that has been needed some significant work. So we have 6 of them ready to be occupied. We're working really hard to get the last 2 ready. And one of the neat things that we were able to work with Brenda Williams on to change, since I've been in this role, is there always have been designated affordable housing, but they weren't designated housing to take Section 8 vouchers, which is a huge need I see with my clients that nope, they have Section 8 vouchers and nowhere to move. So now you don't have to have a Section 8 voucher delivered, but we can place them in our families for Hope that are working really hard and have Section 8 vouchers. And so that is the last of so we own those 3 properties, and then Hope is our family shelter. We own that too, but those are the 3 we own, and fingers crossed by next, I know this is a long way away, but we will apply at the end of the year. It usually opens in December-ish with the Florida Housing Timeframes close, or like January, and by September, no, if we get the funding to build another project, which would be between 65 and 75 units that we talked about earlier.
Are you eligible for any funding from the Children's Services Council?
I am, and I am funded by them. We should find out. I think I cannot remember the date. In the next couple of days, we got summer funding, and
It's to know that our tax dollars are going to go to something that we support.
yeah, and well, we were, when I was talking about diversion earlier, that was my first diversion pot that I applied for and won and was really excited about. And I'm speaking about the impact of it to the council tomorrow.
Awesome.
And how many people we served with that money and what it went towards and why it matters in our community. I am a huge diversion advocate. There just isn't enough diversion dollars. I mean, like, there's so many things we need money for, I know that, but if we can really just intervene before someone slips into homelessness, that is money well spent in our community. I was really excited to get it funded through CHSP this go around, so I have diversion funding for the next 2 years. And then I got another grant, my first Family Promise grant. They awarded 8 out of almost 200 organizations a diversion grant called Help Me Move Home, and it also helps people move out, and we got that. So we're working on that. And yeah, we do get Children's Service Council funding, and we'll keep working hard to apply for anything that, fits what we're doing. I've heard that there will be a homeless pot, and I'm really excited about that because I always want to do more at Hope.
Now, do you work with private landlords and do master lease, or is your focus more on you guys purchasing the property yourself and have the ownership?
We don't well, this is a twofold question. So permanent supportive housing, we help the client get a lease, and we help them navigate it, but that lease is in their name, and we pay the rent, but it's important. And then, so yes, we need private landlords, we need any kind of landlord that wants to work with housing vouchers of any sort, frankly, which is a commodity and something we're always trying to build in our community. And then, so we did talk about 3 projects we own. So we're both, like those projects all fit in niche. One is, like we talked about for veterans, the families one, and the permanent supportive housing. So we're doing both things at the same time, essentially. Always developing relationships with landlords, and then looking to build more affordable housing that we own as a nonprofit and can keep very mission driven and centered around what we are committed to doing in our community.
Yeah, because I want to point out, to me, Robert is an innovator. You're in that space, but you're also an innovator and a problem solver. I just think you would be a cool person to collaborate on solving some of these problems. But you are an innovator like that.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. These are some quick financial highlights. I think this is pretty boring, but we'll do it fast. Our budget was about $6.5 million last year. 5 million of that so was awarded the grants. Our combined admin was 7.27%. We are showing you, this is one of my first grants that we got for Truist. We are always looking for grants, and like many nonprofits, we're largely grant funded, but we've been working really hard to raise unrestricted dollars, which is huge. We have to have unrestricted dollars, and that's something I'm really focused on. We did our first event this year, and it was wonderful. We raised about $80,000, so for us, we were really thrilled. We've just been working on, I call them corporate grants, which are a little more flexible than like HUD grants or very targeted grants to do some things, and I continue to look for all the grants, but it's a big piece of what we do. And also, I have to give a shout out. We rely on volunteers. Volunteers are critical to our organization on so many different levels. So some people are volunteers in the sense that they come in just to like help with the day to day. Like I had a group that was like scrubbing floors and just helping us. We don't have a cleaning service. We do everything ourselves. It just was helping me work on things. And then some of them are like community partnership volunteers that come in and like we work with DCF and Safe Families comes in once a week. And every Monday night they do a moms and kids group and they provide support for moms. They help them be aware of who's like what are signs that someone's being trafficked. Are you being trafficked? We know every day that we're a target for trafficking, and we've seen what that looks like, and it happens right outside our gate. So some of our groups, we have a range of volunteers. Some are doing something really specific and meeting a niche need, and some are doing just general. Sometimes they're helping you with yard work. Sometimes they're helping throw a water day for Hope Kids to have fun. You know, if you're interested in volunteering, it's not something you have to do every week, or it is something you can do once a week. You know, there's lots of just opportunity for you to plug in. We are in the middle of a campaign with All Family Promises to raise money this week. And one of the things that's happening is there's just a volunteer day. And we're asking everybody, do you want to donate an hour of your time, an hour advocating, or an hour of your paycheck, just to help with this diversion of prevention dollars that we were kind of talking about earlier, or to help people move out of hope. I'm looking at that. So I think there's just lots of ways for people to plug in, some fun photos.
What days of the week do you guys also do this volunteering?
There's a volunteer coordinator and a calendar, and it's not just open without planning.
Oh,
So,
okay.
you know, you can't just, it would be impossible. We have so many sites. There's like some monthly stuff you do. You have to coordinate with her. Like we serve our veterans community, and it's called Clean Up Home Front. So if you wanted to do that once a month, you could know when it is and sign up to do that. And different volunteer jobs have different levels of like clearance you need. Like some of them you have to have a background check because we work with kids. It's an emergency shelter. Some of them we have staff supervising. So it's a conversation that you have to have with our resource and volunteer coordinator. And she can help you plug in and has lots of cool opportunities to do that. It's just not something that it just takes planning. But we love volunteers.
Going back just a second to the finance part of it. For instance, like if attorneys, which would be my kid's dad, they try to donate 10% of their income to the Florida Bar and pro bono work. But there are also construction and building agencies that have, you know, like Clemens Rutherford, that have one twin is an architect and one twin is a building construction foreman, engineer. So if say it's not that particular one, because they're our neighbors, sorry, I'm not trying to throw you out under the bus, but they were our neighbors. But if they were willing to donate to do pro bono work, do you have to enter into a bidding process, or could they do a percentage of the work pro bono or all of it even?
That is a large question.
I'm
Every
sorry.
funding stream is different.
Okay.
Details.
Yes.
For like the Florida Housing, to build this new project, we, with Florida Housing, like we have to work with the Florida Housing developer. There's a lot of stipulations around who can do that work.
Okay.
There is often a bidding process required when you have state money that I utilize to do something, and those all follow like typical regulations, and they let me know what they are. So if I have to have 3 bids, I have to have 3 bids.
Right.
And then sometimes, depending on the need, sometimes you can donate labor for free. Some of our projects, like Jason Gazzini helped me when I needed like 2 holes in walls that had water coming through, and he sent out a crew, they're licensed. So it just, if each thing is a very targeted question, and I can answer that. Like if you're like, Holly, I want to help with X, we could look through that and talk about options.
So it's often private grant money. Somebody who's known for doing lots of pro bono volunteer work, like Clemens Rutherford, architect and building. They you know, they can't do it all because they have to support their families, but they're known for giving. And so if it was off of corporate donated money, it would be probably more likely because you have more flexibility, maybe.
Well, it's also not just about like the money stream. Yes, part of it is, but is like what we're doing. Like, does that require a contractor or somebody with a license? You know, like what educational background do they have? That kind of stuff. plays into who can do what, right?
Right.
Like you might be able to tell me you can fix my electrical, but I sure can't let you. You have to be a licensed electrician, right? You may be able to, but just kind of those kind of things all, it depends like the scope of what we're trying to do.
Okay.
But I almost feel like if there's somebody that wants to do something like that, but there's a will, there's a way to make it work, right? Like we need volunteers, and there's almost always ways to plug people in that are interested in giving back. It's just taking the time to have these conversations and figure out what works for them and what we can do.
And being a teacher, I know we get a big pile of money and they say, you have to spend it tomorrow. And we're like, what? and that sometimes
I
is
could do that.
frustrating.
If you have big piles of money that you want to spend tomorrow, I'm happy to do that whenever you would like. All of it, send it all. Not one of us complain about that, never.
Yes.
But you know. So I'm gonna pop back unless there's more questions on the screen. I just have to say we rely on volunteers. This is me. I'm grateful to be here. I think this is a really cool story. We had a family that moved out of housing and it told their story. Nobody plans on coming to Hope. And it's hard. It's hard to have a family in Hope. It's hard to be homeless. It's just, and I think people have this idea that it could never happen to them, but if we think about Tallahassee, 51% is an Alice population, which means that with one $500 expense, they couldn't pay their bills for the month. It isn't just people who aren't working. It isn't people, like, I think our misconceptions of who needs my services are broad and vast. And it's easy to fall into those. It's just easy for something to happen.
I'll give a testimony. I lived in the Chelsea house. I had 17 acres. I was the owner of 17 acres in a house, but it was wrapped up in litigation. So I personally had to go live in the Chelsea house. Beth Burns, call out to Beth Burns. It's a Christian organization. Probably say it saved my life because losing parents, going through a divorce, and then having to go live in a homeless situation is very stressful. So did I ever think that would happen to me? No. I worked most of my life. Did it happen to me? Yes.
Right.
So I can give a personal testimony on that now. And I think that's how God uses us.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm right now, I'm at the Kearney and I'm used to always having, I'm dealing with a fraud problem and it's not something, I'm used to always, having my own, paying for my own rent. I just recently, I was on housing, say for a couple years or whatnot. I didn't expect it to come that quick. I'm the type that I always pay my rent up each year and, just pay my bills on and on. But I mean, it is frustrating. It is very hard being a single parent. I have 4 kids now, and by me even being at the Kearney, and I didn't want my kids out inside of any facility, so I placed them with their grandparents. I still have full custody besides of one. There was a situation at the hospital with their dad or whatever, and that's beyond that. Okay, so we're getting on topic. I'm a single mother. And I'm doing the best that I can. I relocated down from Sarasota. I'm not a broke person. I'm just dealing with a lot of people. My accountants and everything been locked up. Staying amongst other people and everything else, it does make you sick sometimes in a certain way. It does also makes you frustrated when you also have to start from scratch. Because what a lot of people don't understand, even if you're not a Christian or you atheist, but what God gave you today may be gone tomorrow. So you cannot count on everything that you have as of today. You could live fabulous and as your Barbie today, and tomorrow it could be gone. Yes. You know what I'm saying? You never know what happens. And some people feel like they can predict things. Some people feel like, life is good, everything revolves around me. But when you have everything, I can say I have everything revolving around me, and not everything still doesn't go wrong. And I'm still stuck and went down to zero and still got to build myself back up for me to learn my lesson. You see what I'm saying? But I think this opportunity in this seminar actually gave me a chance for me to be able to actually express my feelings and also get back on my feet. So life is changing. As life changes, does mess with your life.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, and listening and hearing everyone's testimony, I wish everyone well, and I wish we could have a plethora of money.
My question is, when someone calls, say for instance, they're going to an eviction, like you said, $500, one bill can knock you out. What do you do if they're at that point? They're about to be evicted.
It depends me personally or our community as a
Your
whole?
your community, if your agency couldn't help them, if you weren't able to help them, do you have other agencies that you may network them to?
211 is a great resource in our community.
Mhm.
I always suggest calling them. They are like the nonprofit connection to tell you who does what, and they work really hard at that. Sometimes I may know that like Catholic charities might have money to do
Whatever, yeah.
rapid rehousing.
Mhm.
We don't have it right now. It just depends. Like sometimes we give you referrals for sure. That's if we don't have the funding to do it. Sometimes the problem is sometimes there just aren't like immediate resources, right? Like there's a wait list for lots of things, which makes it challenging. We do serve people like you're talking about that need that one thing to stay in the housing. But after I've spent the money I have to do it, like there's a set amount and then I have to wait. I can't, but that's a process. We do that all the time. That's that point of homeless prevention and diversion dollars to kind of intervene when one set amount of money. If I can spend $1,000 and that can interrupt somebody from entering the homeless system, and we have it, we do. But $40,000 here and $40,000 there just goes quickly. And so there's not we have a cap on essentially how much we can serve with it. We budgeted out to serve a certain amount of people.
Well, I'm going to take your information back to my job. I work for Ram Construction, and we on Wednesdays normally have our meetings. We pull in all the subcontractors, my bosses. We will pull everybody in. We sit down at the table, and we try to pick and choose which. It's not putting it in a hat. We will have to represent why do we want to help this particular agency. What does it mean to you to why do you want to do it? We have helped schools around the Big Bend area. We will help with the school, like one school for Teacher Appreciation Week. We gave to a particular school to help with the teachers, for all week long. We sponsored lunches, goodie bags. I went around to some of the Millennial Nail Spa, got a couple of gift cards, different things like that, trying to do a wish list for the teachers. So this right here touched me in a way that I'm going to bring your information back.
Thank you.
And I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to ask, every little bit helps. I don't know how much they can give, but I'm going to push to see what we can get.
When you said about diversion, like prevention, money's on prevention is huge, and it might be something like what she's saying is a diversion thing that.
We're trying to raise $20,000 towards diversion every year and next year to help to give us seed money, and that will be $40,000 a year targeted to that for one program plus another. I know that doesn't seem like a ton of money, but it is a ton of money to 35 to 40 families.
So are you going to have when you raise this money, are you doing
a campaign?
Campaign? Are you going to have a campaign?
I'm actually having it this week. Part of it is, we'll update people through the year, but all the funds coming in between Monday and Saturday this week are being dedicated to that. If you looked on our social, you'd see some stuff about it.
Okay.
Family Promises National, you're doing something between this Monday.
See, because I'm the only girl in the office, and I don't do golf, and I don't duck hunt, and I don't do that other stuff. So I get to, when I saw this come up, I said, let me come out and see, and I will let them know that.
Yeah, I have an annual report printed as well. I just said, you can take it with you.
Okay.
And people will hear, I said lawyer's wife, but they'll run with that. But from all of our marriage, except the last year, we lived in a 1952 house we bought for $50,000. And we paid it off in 8 years. We had $80,000 in emergency savings. And we worked our way through college, both of us had. Things still happen. Unexpected things still happen, even when you have worked hard, even when you have emergency savings. Unexpected things, especially a divorce following the death of both parents, which kind of psychologically and in different ways are destabilizing. So, and they often, not just to women, but oftentimes are women and children that are destabilized. So thanks for letting me share that.
No, thank you for sharing.
Hello. Hi. I had a government-built home in Jefferson County. The house is sinking in the ground now. I've been to senators, state legislatures, all these different government places to find out where the money came from, how I got in this position. And it's been 13 years I've been trying to find out how am I living in a government sinking home. I can't get any paperwork from the county on the money that was spent. I don't know where my name went in to get that money for the housing. All I know is I'm living in a home that is sinking in the ground and exposed wires everywhere. All I've been doing is running into a big block of listening to this agency doesn't handle this money, this government official don't handle this money. I'm just a poor woman that owns 1 acre of land. And I'm just trying to find out why I'm still living like this. Right now, I'm going back to Senator Dunn's office today, because I did get one response from him. But these are some of the issues that are happening with the government money. And nobody seems to be able to find any answers to how these contractors are being able to get this money and contract the work back to them and build substantial housing, and nobody wants to answer.
You know, that is really outside of the scope of what I touch, right? Like,
Yeah, which is what you're.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
That isn't in the framework of like, I mean, it almost sounds like I would refer you to like legal services in North Florida. Wesley Bellardo and her team are amazing. You know, somebody, I don't know if you talk to them, they might be a really good resource.
I've been through every legal free agency there is, and all I am getting, I can't even get documentation on a government home that's sitting on my land. It's just like somebody just built a home, put it there, substantial living, and I'm stuck like this. I'm on disability, I don't have money to repair a home.
Well, ma'am, I'm not an expert on everything, but I do know a resource called Habitat Housing. If you actually hold that you are a homeowner, and I know you're probably sustainably holding at least $600 in a bank account. For each month, it depends on, I guess it's 6 consecutive payments of $600, that's not payments, but actually in your bank account. They will actually help you build a new home right there on your property. If you
So
don't
why do it actually, I've already.
You don't have to pay for it. It's just you actually make sure.
We don't have Habitat for Humanity in Jefferson County.
Okay, well, I know, look, these are some great conversations, and I know that we can continue this. We're just about out of time, so you stay, I would love to get us together to continue talking about that. But I wanna let you close up, because I know you have to leave pretty soon. So what else did you wanna share with us? And then we can continue these conversations.
I just want to say thank you for taking a few minutes to learn about what we do. We really believe in connecting community members to affordable housing. It is a huge piece of our mission, and I love our team, and I know that they're working hard at doing it every day. If you want to volunteer with us, we would love to have you. We don't have all the answers. I don't believe one organization does, but we're working really hard on it. And we want to keep working hard on it, and we'd love to have you join us in that work. And we really couldn't do what we do without the vast community response and support we have, whether it be city and county helping us, or if it's volunteers on a Saturday bringing joy to Kids at Hope. We appreciate you. We can't do it without you. Thank you again for learning about what we do today, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. questions. I mean, it's nice to have an engaging conversation and personal stories and, you know,
Yeah.
I think one of the things we talked about titling this talk is how this affects everyone and everything.
It does.
And you, and it does, you know, just what you're going through and you're going through, but just all of us, this is something that impacts everyone. But for you as an organization, you know, the problem is bigger than your funding and ability to handle it, so it's really, really tricky.
Yeah, I mean, we are targeting, you know, a new project, but that will be a drop in the bucket of the affordable. I mean, it will make a difference. Everything we do makes a really big difference. The people we serve, and we do serve a bunch of people in our community. It's just the need is vast. Because we haven't really touched on this, no one's asking about it, like why are stuff limited to people at certain AMIs or low incomes? Because the need is so vast there.
Right.
It's like a drop in the bucket. That like there are caps. I can't serve everybody. And I wouldn't change what we do and how it's targeted because the need at that level is the most basic. But we don't have workforce housing to speak of. I mean, like that's a huge issue. Like people are working full time and our workforce and housing still isn't affordable. Like if you look at what's being developed in new housing in Tallahassee, do you see houses that are less than $500,000?
No.
That is like, so we have to think about what is affordable. Who can afford that? We have to have teachers for our teachers for our workers, but just workforce housing in general. So, and I'm only a piece of that solution, right? Like the truest version of who I'm serving and our mission is to look at how do we advocate for people who have a homeless history, have experienced homelessness. Typically, there's a lot of our clients with disability. That's like our mission, but it doesn't mean those other things aren't vastly important, and we have to address them too. They're all part of like a continuum of things we have to talk about in affordable housing in our community.
Do you have a number, just because I'm completely ignorant on this, a number for what would be the cost to purchase something that would be considered affordable housing? You know, like you said, you're looking at $500,000 for houses, or $350 even being the median.
Well, it just sort of depends on what your budget is, right?
Right, I understand.
But like we have to, I think, when I think about affordable workforce housing, like if we don't build houses for $200,000, we're just gonna cut out a large percentage of the population from ever owning a home.
So to be able to purchase for $200,000.
Right, and if you think about like how does like generational wealth pass, many times it's through housing. So we have to have housing, like renting financially overall doesn't make sense. I understand we have to do it, but if we want people to be able to build wealth, we have to build homes they can purchase, right? So I think about, can we get to where, I think you've already had it here, but Kinder Light, right? 3D printed a house.
Right.
Like we have to think about innovative solutions, and I love 3D printing. My whole Bush School project was on it. Like what we can do to innovate to get us further along that continuum, so more people can own a home. We can break some of those intergenerational cycles of poverty. There's so many pieces of what that looks like. And you know, like you might say, I built this great house. It's $400,000. I put all these stuff in. It's a great value. It's not a great value if my budget only allows it to be $200,000. It's just out of reach. Mm-hmm. And I think it's figuring out what are those. This is like way off track.
Well, no, get off track.
I'm so sorry. Just like what affordable is, and that changes for different populations. We have to address it at all levels.
So what about the little houses?
Tiny houses.
About what did the Carney who Summit Realty with what did a little house cost in the little house community? Do you know?
No.
Do you have any idea? Because a lot of, if you're a single teacher making $34,000 a year, even a $200,000 house is completely ridiculous. So we're even looking at $50,000 and $75,000 houses. And to me, the only thing I see that is in that price range are the little houses.
I mean, they're very, very small. It would be especially small to have a child in.
But all right, well, we're gonna continue this conversation. Let's just let Tamara, because I wanna, no, we can keep talking. Tamara's just gonna close us out right now.
Yeah, like I said, the ongoing joke is every time I say, we probably need a part 2. Because we always want to keep going. But thank you if you joined us online. This will live on the Women Wednesdays page. You can share it. You can go back and view it. A lot of the annual report that Holly presented is a part of the stream. So you can go ahead and see more of it there. But thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week right here.
Thank you.
What is the next week's topic?
Sorry, I thought we were done.
No, that's okay, let's let